that something that you deal with?
It is. I think back to the happy memories, and I think back to the things that made life extra special. And those were some of the things that I tried once he was sick to be able to continue to provide for him. And we did some additional traveling once Chris decided he was going to quit working. And a couple weeks later, he had asked me to quit my job. And so I went ahead and gave it up. And his first announcement to me when we gave up the job was, we're going to Vegas. And I looked at him and I said, oh, okay. And I said to him, I said, okay. He said, I already made the plane, I already bought the plane tickets. I already made the arrangements. I know where we're staying. He said, we're leaving on Monday. This was Friday. I said, well, I guess I better get packing. So we did, and we've encountered some obstacles and met some of them. And I'll never forget him telling me, don't ever send a long black stretch limo to pick up a terminally guy ill at the airport.
Okay.
And so when we got to the hotel and we discovered we were on the 36th floor and we needed to take the elevator up there and he was already in a wheelchair, he just looked at me and said, we better hope there's not any kind of catastrophe. And I said to him, yeah. But those were some of the highlights. We, traveled to New York City and we were, guests of the New York Yankees in a private box, which just ironically happened to be a Garth Brooks concert. And we were there and they treated us like royalty. And then we also, when we went to Nashville, and Tricia treated us like family. And we had lots of those memories, and some of them I even turned into some keepsakes for Chris so that he had things in his man cave when we turned our family room into basically his care room that he was able to be surrounded with. And I continued to try to keep things cheerful for him because nobody wants to sit in a dark place when there may be some impending changes coming.
Well, and I
So
think that
we had lots of good memories.
yes. And I think that was the most important thing for me and for Mike, and I don't know about you and Chris, and it sounds like that's what you did, was I tried to keep things as normal as possible. I tried not to treat him like somebody that was battling a disease. I tried not to treat him, as hard as it was not to quote unquote baby him. But it sounds like you guys did the same exact thing. You didn't let anything stop you. And so when things got really tough and he would come up with an idea like, going to New York or going to Vegas, what did you have to tell yourself? Because it was additional work for you. You had to get yourself around and then you were pushing the wheelchair. And what was it that you had to tell yourself that said, you know what, I can do this? What is it that you had to tell yourself that you could push through no matter what happened and you could make it work?
Because it was meant to be.
Mm.
Everything happened. I always felt everything happened in the time that it was supposed to happen. If we wouldn't have gone to New York when we did, he wouldn't have been able to do the things that he was able to do at that time. He could still stand and pivot to be transferred from a manual chair into a regular chair. He was still able to use his arms somewhat to be able to go ahead and to feed himself, although we discovered early on nice restaurants have heavy silverware. Make sure you ask for the takeout silverware. It's
Mm.
plastic.
Mm.
And the same way with, having to do the research ahead of time to know what kind of obstacles you were going to run into. When we traveled back for our daughter's wedding, we talked to the hotel ahead of time, and we did the same with Nashville because we had to have special equipment in the hotel rooms. I don't know if people realize it, but we had a hospital bed, we had a Hoyer lift, we had different things that we needed, and hospice helped us arrange to have that equipment available when we got there. And we had to do some of that kind of homework and pre-planning. And the same way with Nashville, I found out they had valet parking for the vehicles.
Mm.
Um, but those were some of the things that we were able to go ahead and do that were beneficial to make things less there was less obstacles involved as opposed to being pre-planned for. Um,
Right.
but again, unexpected, wonderful surprises can happen. Um, the trip to New York, we weren't meant to be in a private box, but it happened when we got there, and Garth Brooks' recording equipment was in our seats, and they had to put us somewhere else. So we ended up in a private box. Um, so it was just, um, it was a journey that had some bumps in it. Early on, we had a neighbor who came over and built a ramp so that Chris was able to get in and out of our garage and house without falling, and grab bars in our bathroom. And um, I always said I never fed Chris. I always ate with him.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and the
perspective,
thing
isn't it? It's really perspective. It's how you look at it.
it is, and that has a lot to do with it. And he asked me not to take our Christmas tree down the last Christmas that we had together. And I kind of looked at him kind of funny, and he said, just change it. So I used my creativity and I morphed it into a January let it snow tree, into a Valentine's love tree, into a St. Patrick's Day Notre Dame tree, and on and on. We had an Americana tree, we had a spring tree, we had a fall tree,
That's
and
awesome.
he saw that every
Mhm.
single day, and I didn't want him to look out the window when he was bedridden and see the same exact thing. So I
Mhm.
tried to change something so that he didn't feel like life was going on and he was missing it.
Mhm. That's a that's a great idea to keep the Christmas tree up and just keep changing it for the seasons. That's awesome. My grandma used to do that. We used to think that she was a little crazy, but I can see how just that little bit of, something different. It was out of the ordinary, right? And so that's what leads to I really did have an extraordinary life because this one thing, you take it and you turn it into a positive. I think that's awesome. So I gotta ask you. We've only got a couple minutes left already, but Chris gave you the title as the Queen of Peas. So you have to be able to you have to share that with us. What do the P's stand for?
Well, Chris himself was a little bit of a perfectionist and he liked things a certain way. So he happened to get the nickname King Christopher. Well, I looked at him and I said, well, if you're a king, that must make me a queen. And he looked at me and he smiled, and he had a smile that could light up a room. And he looked at me and he said, you're the queen of pea. And I said, what? And he said, you're in charge of all things that start with the letter P. And that evening, because I journal, I sit down when it was quiet and I started thinking about it. And I thought, you know what? He's right. I'm in charge of the pets and the pills and the pillows and the positioning and the provisions and the planning and the praying. And every single day, my list of P's keep growing. And then I thought about it a little more and I discovered that he was my partner. And we were in this together for better or worse or richer or poorer. And there was another P. And then he treated me like a princess. And now it was my turn to take care of him. And sometimes I'd get a little pissed off and I'd get overwhelmed. And he'd have to, kind of help calm me down and get me back on track. And the peas just continued to grow and grow. And so I just kind of grew into the title of Queen of Pea.
That's awesome. And that's how cool that you still have that and that you're able to look back on that because you owned it. That's exactly what you were. And all of those jobs you did very, very well. And he was very lucky to have you because there aren't a lot of people, which I have found, and I don't know if you've experienced that, but a lot of people wouldn't stay. They decided not to take ownership of their vows for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, and they leave. And so I commend you for doing everything that you did for him to give him the greatest life that he could have ever asked for. So thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your story with me today. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me a guest. And just remember, as a caregiver, people don't choose the diseases, whether it's cancer, heart disease, ALS. They don't choose the disease. The disease comes at them, and it's just our job to help them realize that we're there for them and
That's
that
right.
we love them and we're not going to abandon them.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions about our guest today, feel free to contact me at kbecker@hellogorgeous.org. If you want to know more about Hello Gorgeous, you can visit our website at www.hellogorgeous.org. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and download our mobile app. Thank you for joining me today on Hello Gorgeous, Everything Beauty, Cancer, and Inspiration. I'm your host, Kim Becker. And until next time, stay gorgeous.